Good morning, 21E. I'm Captain Caressa Hewitt. As a reminder, guest speakers are afforded non-attribution and academic freedom status while speaking at SOS, and comments are not to be attributed to speakers. Lieutenant James B. Hecker is Commander and President, Air University, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. He provides full-spectrum education, research, and outreach at every level through professional military education, professional continuing education, and academic degree granting. He leads the Intellectual and Leadership Center of the U.S. Air Force, graduating more than 50,000 residents and 120,000 non-resident officers, enlisted, and civilian personnel each year. Additionally, he is responsible for officer commissioning through Air Force Training School, through Officer Training School and the Reserve Officer Training Corps. Lieutenant General Hecker was commissioned in the Air Force in 1989 after graduating from the U.S. Air Force Academy. He was both a graduate and instructor at the U.S. Air Force Weapons Instructor course. He has commanded at the squadron, group, wing, and numbered Air Force levels. The general last served as Vice Director of Operations Joint Staff, the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. Lieutenant General Hecker is a command pilot with more than 3,500 hours flying various aircraft, including the F-15C Eagle, F-22 Raptor, MQ-1B Predator, H-860 Pavehawk, C-208 Caravan, and the T-38C Talon. He has flown combat missions and Operations Southern Watch, Allied Force, Resolute Support, and Freedom Sentinel. Ladies and gentlemen of Class 21E, please stand and welcome a 1995 graduate of Squadron Officer School, Lieutenant General James Hecker.
Well, thank you. Carry on, please.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. How's everyone doing? Hey, it's good that we're all sitting next to each other now. It's kind of nice. It's also good to have you here in person. I think this is the third class that we've been able to do in person, although limited numbers. Is it the next class we're going to go to full? Sure. All right, we'll have like 600 people here or something? 700? Awesome. I think there's like 605 in your class right now. I think we got about a 145 here and about 460 or so on the outstation. So to everyone in Zoom land, hi. Anyways, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Really appreciate it. You know, I think she just said I went to SOS in 1995. Were you guys born by then? Yeah, you were? Good. You were 3? Yeah, awesome. Okay, making me feel good here. Hey, this is one touch point that you'll have with Air University. Probably a lot of you don't know about Air University and what we do here. And quite honestly, until I became the president, I didn't realize the extent of the things that we did here at Air University as well. But my hunch is some of you have already been to Air University. Meaning you went to either OTS or ROTC, right? Show of hands. Okay, fair amount. And the rest, as you know, went to the academy. What I didn't know, I went to the academy. So I kind of thought, and most people think, that most of our officers come from the Air Force Academy. But really, it's, only about 20% come from the academy. And about 80% either come through OTS or ROTC. And we have a lot of ROTC attachments, like 145 detachments that we have. But then when you count all the crosstown agreements and everything, it's over 1,000 schools that we have. And then, of course, we do our officer training school. And none of that stopped. Some of the ROTC schools stopped, but we didn't stop on the military side when we hit COVID. So we powered right on through, and that's why we don't have an accession problem. As a matter of fact, we have too many people right now. Which creates a lot of other problems that I had to deal with a little bit ago with ROTC. Anyways, SOS is probably your second stop. Maybe some of you did a stop in between there because Air University owns AFIT as well. So if any of you went on to get your master's at AFIT right after school or since school, that is also owned by Air University. Your next touch point here would probably be Air Command and Staff College. So that's when you're doing your IDE. Not everyone has the opportunity to do that. Matter of fact, it's pretty small. It's only like 35% or so will be able to do that. And then the next stop after that is a thing called LDC. And that could come before or maybe slightly after ACSC. LDC is the Leadership Development Course. It's a 2-week course. that we have here, and it's kind of bridges the gap, and it's for potential squadron commanders, and it's about 2 to 3 years out before becoming a squadron commander. The good news is we put a lot of that curriculum in the Squadron Officers School course because it's such a good course. So the first 2 weeks that you guys did, I think it's the first 2 weeks, is roughly equivalent, those soft skills, learning about yourself. I kind of think about it as teaching EQ. We always taught IQ, and now we're kind of teaching EQ. So you learn about yourself, where your weak points are, where your strengths are, how do you cover your weaknesses, how do you bring those up, and those kind of things. Very successful course, but that's another touch point you may have here. And then, of course, when you get to SDE, it could be Air War College. Now, there's all other places to do IDE and SDE other than here, but of course, I'm more biased to here. But typically, you only do one of those two here at Air University. The other ones you'll go do somewhere else. So that's a touch point. Other things, the Acre Center, we have several leadership courses. If you become a group commander, a wing commander, those kind of things, you'll stop through here for a couple weeks to get some courses done. All the Barnes Center stuff, you won't do it, but your folks will. Barnes Center is all of our enlisted education. So out in the real Air Force, that's where at the wings, they'll do ALS, Airman Leadership School. And then we have 11 places where we do the NCOA Academy for our mid-level enlisted. But then when you get to the senior level enlisted, that's done over at Gunter Annex, which is about 15 miles away or so, 15 minutes away. And that's where you do the senior NCOA Academy. That's where they'll do the chief leadership course and those kind of things. We have the chaplain school here. We have civilian school here. We have JAG school here. The LeMay Center is here. LeMay is where all the doctrine is done. You guys love reading doctrine, right? Is that part of their course? Do they have to read doctrine now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here's why you should thank the LeMay Center. The basic doctrine that we have used to be 3 volumes. Those 3 volumes totaled 225 pages. Nobody ever read them. I'll admit, I didn't read it. The people who wrote this stuff didn't even read all of it, right? Because it was just too much. So we took those 3 volumes, we condensed it into 16 pages. So the 255 went to 16, and that's why Colonel True here can assign that to your reading, because it's only 16 pages. And it kind of just says who we are as an Air Force. And we had to redo it because, the Space Force ventured off with the Guardians and those kind of things. So now you can actually read the thing. General Brown, what he's talking about, accelerate, change, or lose, right? You've heard that, I'm sure. He's using doctrine as an avenue to accelerate change. Doctrine is normally taking our best practices that we've done and we've tried in war and everything else. And we take all those best practices and we put it into our doctrine. That's still the case, but we have leading edge stuff that we want to get moving, and he wants to accelerate it and get it moving faster. So we're using doctrine and doctrine notes to do that. So the Air Force has never done a doctrine note before, but we just did one, and it was on Joint All-Domain Operations, which I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with. If not, you will be by the end of the course. And that's, forward-thinking, forward-looking. We're working with PACAF, we're working with the half staff and those kind of things to put this together, and we put out a doctrine note, which is forward-looking other than gathering best practices that have been tried and true, and blood is on the actual papers, right? Because people have died because they didn't follow that. This one is looking forward and trying to accelerate us forward. So they did that, and that note is turned into doctrine, and we actually have a publication now, and we actually up that thing continually. Normally, that process would take about 1.5 years to get that done and route it through all the things we had to route it through. General Brown didn't want to wait that long. So the staffing function was, hey, LeMay, you write it, coordinate with USAFE and PACAF as you're writing it and some other entities. But once it's done, when we start routing it, I want it to go from General Hecker. He can collaborate with the A3, the half A3, the half A5, and then it comes to me and I sign it. So you talk about his action order B bureaucracy. That's getting rid of some bureaucracy, moving it up that way. Now we're doing the same thing with ACE. How many are familiar with ACE? Okay. Hopefully that's in later on in the academics here. But Agile Combat Employment. And this is a way that we think we need to move as we go forward, fighting against a Russia threat, fighting against a China threat, those kind of things. So the idea is, you know, before we were the only ones that had precision weapons. Okay, now all of our 2+3 adversaries have precision weapons, to include Iran. You saw what Iran did in Saudi about a year and a half ago. You've seen what they've been doing recently with some of their drone attacks and those kind of things. So it's not going to be like the Desert Storm days when I first grew up, where we got 6-7 months to work with the Saudis, you know, work with Kuwait, you know, work with everybody to try to get basing rights and then move all our stuff in there. It takes 6 months to make that happen, et cetera. We're not going to have that luxury. And then once we get there, all they got to do is put in some coordinates into a cruise missile and they take us down. You know, they know where our defects are, they know where our lodging is, they know where our aircraft are parked, et cetera. So Agile Combat Employment is to take a hub, you know, say PSAB, Prince Sultan Air Base, which would have been a hub back in the day, right? And now we disperse those assets, as well as the logistics, as well as the people, as well as the munitions, as well as the food, to other places, and maybe operate out of there for 3 or 4 days and then move. So we're complicating the adversary's problem. And the big thing is we have to move before their kill chain loop gets done, and they know that we're there, they get the coordinates, you know, get the targeting done, reprogram it, and hit us, right? So that's what that's all about. And there's a lot going on in that field as we move forward, going forward. And you'll hear a lot about that as we go through there. A little bit more about Air University. There's kind of 3 reasons that I get that people don't want to come here to Air University. The first one is schools. So I'm just going to kind of break the myth here real quick and let you know what we're doing with schools. The next one is spouse reciprocity. And the other one for students, you know, going to our 10-month schools is, hey, it's only 10 months and that kind of sucks for the family, right? Move them up here for 10 months and we're moving again. So let's start with the schools. There's a report card that comes out that the Air Force puts together for all the bases, I think 154 in the continental United States. And they rank schools and they rank spouse licensure reciprocity. We did pretty good on the licensure reciprocity. On the school side, I think we're second from the bottom. That's a little bit of a misnomer, because the way they do that is they take the BAH allowance, which covers 7 different counties in the river region here. Out of those 7, we really only have folks that go to 3. I think out of the other 4, we have 3 or 4 people that go, but they all count in it, and unfortunately those are pretty low, the ones that go to those schools, because people are educated now. You get on the internet, you figure out where to live, right? So you go to the places where they have better schools. So that's one thing that brings us down. The other thing, about 1/4 of our population goes to the school on base, which is a MIM school, DoDEA school. It is the only DoDEA school that the Air Force has in the continental United States. We have several overseas, as you guys probably have kids that have gone to them before, but very few, one, and it's here at Maxwell. Since it's on base, that doesn't go into the numbers. And it's a great school. It gets very high ratings. If we were able to do that, that would really push us up the list. The reason I tell you that is so you know that it's a lot better than what the list says. But having us down on the bottom of the list kind of helps me out with the people in town to try to raise the level of all the schooling. And I want all the schooling to be good, not only for your kids, and, you know, our kids, but for the people here in the river region that we're trying to recruit. So that helps me out there. And they've done a lot of things. Okay, right now, if you're a military dependent, you can go to any school you want. Doesn't matter where you live. Okay, so out of zone, you're allowed to go anywhere you want. Okay, how many other places, counties will do that? Probably very few. I lived in one, but that was by law. Is when I had to live on base at Nellis Air Force Base, my kids were zoned for a high school that was nearby that wasn't good. It didn't meet the No Child Left Behind mandate for 2 years, and if it didn't do that, then you're allowed to go out of zone schooling, which we did as long as they had room for you. But it's a little bit of a pain because now you're driving them there because the bus services don't work and those kind of things. So the best thing to do is obviously live where you want your kids to go to school, but that's not always possible because if you're living on base because you got a 5th and a 6th grader, okay, and then you stay here for 3 years, got great schools, all of a sudden, boom, you're going to high school, and now the high school that you're zoned for isn't good. Well, now you can go out of zone to do that, and we're working on the athletic portion of that. For junior varsity, it's fine here. For varsity, we still have a little bit of problems where they may have to sit out for a year and those kind of things. So that's a huge plus. The other plus is we have a lot of magnet schools here. The magnet schools are free, but they're competitive, and you need to apply for them. You used to have to apply for them like December, and unfortunately, you're coming here, think 3 years in the future for ACSC or something like that. You didn't know you were coming here until a little bit later, potentially, so you couldn't get your application in on time. So we've got them to push that application back. Some of the reason the schooling is not good here is because they get their money from property taxes. Montgomery Alabama in general, has the lowest property taxes in the nation. They don't make a lot of their money from property taxes. And the only way to change the property tax is to have the public vote to increase your taxes. How many people would vote to increase your taxes, right? So of course nothing really came of that. But now, because of the report card, because of the emphasis that we put on it, they actually voted this year to increase their taxes. So we're going to get $33 million more a year into the school system because the public here in the River region agreed to do a vote and increase their taxes. So that's going to help out. So we got a lot of things that are moving in the right direction when it comes to school. We have 2 school liaison officers here as opposed to 1, so now people can get their questions answered a little bit better. All the schools have agreed to be Purple Heart or Purple Star schools, which means they'll all have a military liaison within their school that will work directly with the family, can figure out, supposed to be experts on how to transfer credits and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of good work done with the schools, but we're not going to let up and we're going to continue to press on. The biggest thing that we probably got, and this was just recently in January, when the new NDAA came out, it was a federal law that if you lived off base, you couldn't go to a DoDEA base or a DoDEA school on base. So if you wanted to go to our DoDEA good school, it's only K through 8, you had to live on base to do it. We got the law passed, and it allowed for 4 pilot programs for a period of 5 years to be able to take people from off base to on base. We were one that was selected by Secretary Austin here about 2 months ago to be a pilot program. So starting next school year, you will be able to take, or you'll have the opportunity to take your military kids, if they're K through 8, bring them in to work with you, drop them off at school, do your work, pick them up, and take them back home. We went live, I think, last Tuesday, about 10 days ago at 06:30 in the morning, and we had 100 applicants like that. Problem is right now, we have room for about 50. We built a brand new school. They're going to demolish the old school, but instead we had them hold off on that, and now we're going to renovate the old school. So this year we'll have roughly room for about 50, and then over a period of 3 to 4 years we'll have room for over 400, which is what our initial survey indicated that the folks that live here would, about 400 of their kids would be able to come on school. So a lot of progress there. Spouse licensure and reciprocity. We had, I think, 6 laws passed, state laws on anywhere from school teachers to lawyers to doctors that will make it much easier when you come in, not having to retake the bar and those kind of things. And they'll continue to improve as we move on. So that is really improving for the population. The last reason, the 10-month schools, we're trying to fix that as well. How are we fixing that? We're trying to get more 2- and 3-year programs, because people will look at their options for IDE and SD. They go, well, shoot, if I go up to NDU at the DC area, I can go do school for a year, chances on, pretty much guarantee follow on to the Pentagon, for a 2-3-year assignment. Now I'm locked in 3-4 years in the same place. And that's great for the kids, same school during that time, we get to live there, we don't have to move after 10 months. So what we're doing here is we came up with a thing called an AU fellowship. So when you get ready for IDE, think about this, and a lot of people are taking it up on us, especially joint spouse and people that have been deployed a lot. Okay, so what this is you come here for ACSC, you sign up for the AU Fellow. What you'll do is you'll come here to ACSC in residence for a year with a guaranteed follow-on to teach at either SOS, you've probably seen a couple of these teachers, right? Or ACSC, or OTS. So you can teach at those 3 institutions for a minimum of a year, with the ability to extend for a year as long as your functional will let you, because they have room to let you do that. So a 2- to 3-year assignment. And we had 75 this year. It used to be 52. We're probably going to arrive somewhere around 60 folks a year that can do that. During those 2 to 3 years, you don't deploy. So if you're special ops, if you're a defender, you've been on the road for a while and need a little breather, joint spouse, one's deployed, one's not, and now you can get together for 2 to 3 years. So that's a plus. The other thing that we've done is we're going to do the same thing for Air War College. We're starting off with 4 of those where they'll go to Air War College and then teach at Air War College. And then that program, the Leadership Development Course, LDC, that I talked about, pre-Squadron Command course, graduated squadron commanders are the one that come teach at that. They'll come teach at that for a year with a guaranteed follow-on to Air War College. So another opportunity for a 2-year assignment. The other thing we're doing is some of the people that go to ACSC are thinking about going to SAS afterwards, another school that we have here at Maxwell. It's the Book a Day Club, fairly small, about 45 folks. What we decided to do is, hey, let's not wait for them to be here for 4 months, do the board, and then they see if they come in, get into selected for SAS. Let's pick it earlier, because they may have come here as a Geo Bachelor or Bachelorette, and then all of a sudden they get selected for SAS, and they're like, well, shit, if I knew I was going to be there for 2 years, I would have brought my spouse, right? So we already did this past year. We selected, and you had the opportunity to put in for SAS and ACSC. We picked the SAS class, and then if you were in there, now you know before your PCS that you're going to come to ACSC with a guaranteed follow-on to SAS. So those are some good programs that we put together to try to help us out. The city here is a lot different than it was when you heard that I went to SOS in 1995 or Air War College in 2006. The downtown area, have you guys been down there yet? They're allowed to go off base now? All right. Lot different. When you first come out the gate here to the left, and it's all run down, that's how the downtown area used to be. And you saw what they've done there. They got the Biscuit Stadium up there. Anyone been to a Biscuits game yet? Handful? I think the next game is next week. There's none this weekend. But they're fun to go to, and they got the restaurants and the bar areas and all that stuff. So it's pretty good things to do. The zoo's down there. EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative, I highly recommend going to that. Very sombering thing, and it kind of says the history of Maxwell and make sure we don't repeat it kind of thing. So I definitely go see that. And then we just did a ribbon cutting. As you go out towards I-65, you see all the black, fake fencing out there, and there's construction going on. That's going to be a whitewater rafting park. Olympic grade, so we'll have Olympic trials that will be held here, but there's also lazy rivers and rock climbing. There's going to be a bunch of restaurants on the outside, conference centers. So that whole area, when you take a left and go down Maxwell Boulevard towards downtown, on the left-hand side is going to be a huge $50 million water park. The other side, where you see all the vacant buildings, the city owns most of it right now, and they're going to put a lot of stuff there. I'm personally going for a Top Golf, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, they're cleaning up Maxwell is my point. So when it comes to opportunities in the future, make sure you take a look at us. Okay, has anyone heard of GPC? Has anyone not heard of GPC? Oh, okay. So maybe if I say great power competition, does that, now you know? Okay, now we know what it is. Okay. So great power competition. Started off with the NDS in 2018. We have the 2+3 as we call it. So China, Russia are the 2, and then the 3 we got is North Korea, Iran, and then violent extremist groups, right? Everyone was kind of wondering when the new administration took over, what's it going to look like? Okay, they don't have their NDS out yet, but I'm being told it's going to be out by the December timeframe. But the Biden administration did put out an interim, national defense strategy. And if you've looked at that, it's basically in line with the previous administration. A little bit more on the allies and partners, which I think is a good thing as we move forward. You never can have enough allies and partners. Probably even a more emphasis on China than I saw with the Trump administration. And you've seen a lot of the rhetoric that has come out. So there is some talk that it may go to a 1+4 as opposed to a 2+3. We'll see what actually comes out when the NDS comes out, but it's definitely going to continued emphasis on China. So with that said, the previous secretaries, and I know we went through a lot of Secretary of Defenses during that time, and I was up on the joint staff working for all 3 of them. But they had a mandate that, hey, let's really concentrate on great power competition. And we're going to push that down to all of our professional military education. As a matter of fact, we're going to mandate that 50% of the curriculum needs to deal with great power competition, those countries. And oh, by the way, 40%, I want it to deal with the pacing threat, which is China. So you will see, and SOS has been great at changing their curriculum, which is no easy feat, to concentrate on great power competition. So during the Cold War, if you were sitting here in this auditorium doing Squadron Officer School, almost all your curriculum would have been talking about the Soviet Union. When you went to your first operational assignment during that time, like I did at Holloman Air Force Base flying F-15Cs, that's all we talked about was Russia. That's all we planned and exercised to. I knew exactly where we would deploy if we're going to go to war with Russia.